Upon the viewing of a map of Latin America, we can easily pick out the most powerful country. Not Mexico, Brazil, or Argentina, but Cuba. This sugar island had pristine blue beaches, but was loaded and packed to the brim with Russian Kalashnikovs, tanks, and for a time, nuclear bombs, all of which, similar to Columbus, crossed the blue Atlantic to stumble upon the Paradise Islands, and led to disaster for the people there. Armed to the brim was not just this beautiful island though, but a man, the well-known Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz. What made Castro different from everyone else in his island's history was how much of a pain he was going to be to the interest of the elephant above him, the United States of America. Slavery-supporting congressmen once proposed purchasing Cuba from Spain to turn it into another slave state, spreading the dreaded institution internationally. Castro also remembered America's control of the island's affairs after Spanish rule, and so decided that he was going to oppose the Americans' friends all throughout the planet, notably in Africa. The island dictator sent his first batch of military support to the Arabs. The Algerians, while fighting for independence from France, had some Cuban military support. 10 years later, Syria called on the Cubans for help against Israel during the Yom Kippur War, in which 2 Cuban tank brigades fought the Israeli army. And then, the big one. In 1975, Portugal finally gave independence to Angola after years of resisting international pressure to do so. What remained in the southern African country were 2 factions, a communist one and an anti-communist one. Quickly, the communists had taken over a majority of the country. Just to the south of Angola, though, was apartheid South Africa. The apartheid government hated 2 things, black people and communists. And then here you had these African communists on their northern border? Nah. The apartheid regime sent 2,000 troops across their lines to secure an anti-communist government there. The South African reaction was effective, pushing the communists to retreat. Back in Havana, Castro looked at the map and said, no. They sent 2,000 troops to a country that borders them. Nah, I'll send 18,000 soldiers to a country across the ocean who the Russians don't even like. And as if this wasn't enough, Castro committed 16,000 more Cuban troops to help communist Ethiopia defend against an invasion by Somalia, who hoped to take over land in Ethiopia populated by ethnic Somalis called the Ogaden. Mind you, Ethiopia and Somalia were, and frankly still are, 2 of the world's poorest countries. In both scenarios, Castro's efforts brought results. The Cubans managed to repel the Somalis and put the Ogaden back under Ethiopian control. In Angola, Cuba was also very effective against South Africa, which kept Angola a communist state. That was until they decided to be a social democrats a year later. Cuba was single-handedly changing what the map looked like in countries halfway across the world from it. Cuba was not a global power. It was not big, nor rich, nor did it have any history of executing foreign intervention. Yet here we had a Spanish-speaking country in the Caribbean going to war on behalf of Ethiopians to fight Somalis, 2 countries on the far end of Africa who have pretty much no relation to the Caribbean. With Cuba doing all this, it seemed like they couldn't be stopped. They even helped communists fighting in Nicaragua, another country on the doorstep of America. All of this is without mentioning interventions Cuba undertook in Panama, Venezuela, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Yemen, the Dominican Republic, and Chile. The Cuban government looked to do what was called a continuous revolution, which referred to the spread of communism everywhere, and the support of communist movements no matter where they were. The Cubans had shown that they could spread communism where America didn't want it, and that they could do so while sitting barely 200 miles off Florida. That's nearly the same distance as Washington, D.C. to New York City. No other rival or enemy of America was this close to it. Cuba being an enemy meant that other larger enemies could use its proximity to the US mainland strategically, which is exactly what the Soviets did when they tried to place nuclear weapons on the island. Remember though, this was the most powerful country in Latin America. It was armed with the brim with Soviet guns and tanks, and money, and science, which served the backbone of its economy. Once the Soviets were gone, Cuba was there. Figuring out how to maintain a country that was dependent on another empire that didn't exist anymore would be an entirely different story. But from that point, any chance Castro had at another intervention was little.